Alexander's story doesn't just appear out of nowhere. He was born in the small Macedonian town of Pella, in the summer of 356 BCE. Long before anyone imagined he'd be remembered as one of history's greatest leaders. His father, King Philip of Macedon, and his mother, Olympias, shaped the world he grew up in. Philip became king when he was only 24, and he didn't waste a moment. He rebuilt Macedonia's strength from the ground up, trained his soldiers with new methods, and equipped them with an enormous 18-foot spear called the sarissa. No other army carried anything like it, and it gave the Macedonians a powerful edge on the battlefield. Even though Alexander is such an important figure today, we don't actually know a lot of clear details about his early childhood. Most of the stories come from the writer Plutarch, who lived many centuries later. What we do know is that Alexander grew up surrounded by learning, ideas, and great teachers. He studied under the famous philosopher Aristotle, who taught him subjects like science, philosophy, and politics. One of his other teachers, Lysimachus, influenced Alexander's imagination by comparing him to Achilles, the legendary Greek hero. But while Alexander was being shaped by this education, trouble was brewing at home. Philip married another woman named Cleopatra and had another son. This created tension in the royal family, and Olympias became even more protective of Alexander because she believed he was the rightful heir. By the time Alexander was 18, he had already proven himself in battle. He fought beside his father against the armies of Athens and Thebes. These Greek city-states were trying to stop Philip from taking control of Greece. Philip set a trap for them, and when the perfect moment came, Alexander led his cavalry with speed and precision, helping secure a major victory at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BCE. This battle gave Philip complete control of Greece. But just 2 years later, Philip was murdered by one of his own bodyguards. After Philip's death, Alexander and Olympias acted quickly to remove anyone who might challenge Alexander's claim to the throne. Alexander officially became king in 336. He now ruled Macedonia and also had authority over Greek cities like Athens, Sparta, and Thebes. His rule wasn't calm at first. Different groups immediately rebelled against him, hoping the young new king wouldn't be strong enough to handle it. In 335, he marched north and defeated the Thracians, showing everyone he wasn't weak. While he was away fighting, a rumor spread in Greece claiming Alexander had died in battle. This rumor caused chaos, and Thebes rebelled by pushing out the Macedonian soldiers and General Parmenio. When Alexander returned, he defeated Thebes quickly and firmly, sending a message that rebellions would not be tolerated. In 334, Alexander began his long and ambitious campaign against Persia. Persia had attacked Greece in the past and destroyed sacred temples in Athens, so many Greeks supported Alexander and believed he was the one who could finally strike back. Alexander set out with about 35,000 soldiers and a fleet of ships. Even though the Persian army was much larger and included Greek mercenaries led by Memnon, Alexander didn't hesitate. After crossing the Hellespont into Persian territory, Alexander faced his first major battle at the river Granicus. The Persians held a strong position on higher, rocky ground and attacked him from several sides. Alexander was wounded but survived, and when the Persians retreated, they left their Greek mercenaries to take heavy losses. After this important victory, Alexander moved down the Ionian coast. Many cities simply surrendered to him, and Greek cities like Ephesus welcomed him warmly. Memnon tried to stop Alexander by controlling the seas with the Persian navy, but Alexander refused to engage in sea battles and kept winning on land. At Halicarnassus, he faced Memnon again, defeated him, burned parts of the city, and placed his ally Ada in charge. Other cities, Termissus, Aspendus, Perge, Selgae, and Sagalassus, were taken with little resistance. When he reached Selene, he sent his general Antigonus to bring the region under control. As Alexander pushed further into Persian territory, more and more people began to believe he was blessed by the gods, or even partly divine. One legendary story told of the Gordian knot, a giant knot of rope that no one had been able to untie. According to prophecy, the person who solved it would rule the world. Instead of trying to untie it, Alexander sliced it cleanly with his sword. King Gordius surrendered afterward, and word of this bold act spread quickly. The death of Memnon soon after only strengthened the idea that Alexander had destiny on his side. In November 333, Alexander met King Darius III at the Battle of Issus. Darius had a much larger army and even tried a clever strategy by approaching Alexander from behind to cut off supplies. However, the battle took place on a narrow plain, where Darius's huge army couldn't spread out. Alexander took advantage of this and won. Darius fled the battlefield, leaving behind his camp and even members of his family. After Issus, Alexander continued deeper into Persian territory. Cities like Byblos and Sidon surrendered easily. But Tyre was a different story. Tyre was an island fortress protected by walls and surrounded by water. Since Alexander didn't have a strong navy, taking the city seemed almost impossible. But he found help when many soldiers from the Persian navy defected and joined him. After a long and difficult siege, Alexander captured Tyre. Many of its defenders were killed, and the city was taken under Macedonian control. In 331, Alexander headed into Egypt. The Egyptians welcomed him because he freed them from Persian rule. They saw him as a liberator rather than a conqueror. During his time there, he founded the city of Alexandria, which would grow into one of the most important cities in the ancient world. He also made a long journey across the desert to the temple of Zeus Ammon. There, an oracle told him that he was destined to rule the world. Later, when Darius offered a truce, Alexander refused. He wanted the entire Persian Empire. Later in 331, he marched east and met Darius again, this time at the Battle of Gaugamela. This was one of the most famous battles of his career. Even though Darius had a huge army, Alexander's strategy and the discipline of his soldiers led to another major victory. With Darius fleeing once more, cities like Babylon and Susa fell easily, and Alexander captured enormous amounts of wealth. When he arrived at Persepolis, he stayed for several months before continuing after Darius, only to find out that Darius had been killed by his own men. Now ruling over a vast empire, Alexander began adopting Persian clothing and customs. He wanted to blend Greek and Persian cultures into one great civilization. He married Roxane, a woman who was not Greek, which upset some of his Greek soldiers, but showed his commitment to uniting different cultures. In 327, he continued expanding his empire by marching into India. There he faced King Porus at the river Hydaspes in a brutal and exhausting battle. Alexander won, but the cost was high. His soldiers were tired, injured, and emotionally drained. They refused to go any farther into India. Alexander, who had taken a serious chest wound himself, finally agreed to turn back. Alexander died on June 10, 323 BCE, when he was only 33 years old. The exact cause of his death is still unknown. Some believe he was poisoned. Others think he died from illness brought on after heavy drinking, or from malaria returning. As his condition worsened, rumors spread quickly and worried his soldiers. On June 9, his generals allowed the troops to see him one at a time. Alexander was too weak to speak, but still waved his hand to acknowledge them. By the next day, the great conqueror who had built one of the largest empires the world had ever seen was gone.